Now, Shannon Alford joins us, NRA ILA's Maryland State Liaison. Shannon, thank you for coming on the program this afternoon.
Absolutely. Glad to be on.
So, in Maryland, the new gun control laws are in effect, and they are in effect because at this hearing yesterday, a federal judge refused to block the gun laws from being enforced. And I got to say, Shannon, I thought this was kind of odd. The judge said apparently that no proof that irreparable harm was going to be suffered by letting these laws go into effect. I talked with a gun store. I talked with an FFL yesterday in Maryland who said, I don't have the forms. The Maryland State Police didn't give us the forms. We were there on September the 30th, and they didn't give us the new forms that we needed. So he had a whopping total of 2 people come in yesterday to try to buy a firearm after 53 people bought a gun on Monday. This guy's pretty clearly seeing some effects as a business person on the new Maryland gun laws, including the fact that the state doesn't have its act together, apparently.
Oh, absolutely. The fact of the matter is it is not possible for your average Maryland citizen who is not retired law enforcement, who is not a veteran, who is not a firearm safety instructor themselves, just, Jane Q. Public cannot go legally purchase a handgun in the state of Maryland today. It can't be done.
Can't do it.
Can't do it.
But so if I lived in Maryland, and thankfully I don't, but if I wanted to exercise my Second Amendment right, if I wanted to become a gun owner today, you're telling me it's impossible for me to do that?
Not if you want to buy a handgun.
Jeez.
You could buy an unregulated long gun, so you could go buy yourself a shotgun. Thank you, Vice President Biden. But you could not exercise your core individual Second Amendment right to purchase a handgun for self-defense in the home. And here's the reason why. Because in order to get the handgun qualification license, which is the permit that you now need to have to purchase a handgun, you have to have training, and you have to have the physical license in hand. Well, the training, the instructors haven't been published online until just recently. So if you happen to be friends with an instructor, maybe you could have it done. But if you didn't know where to go to find an instructor, you wouldn't have been able to find an instructor. You have to take the time to get the training, which is 16 hours of training, 8 hours of training, rather. And then you would have to go down and go online, pay your $50, and apply for the license. And then Maryland State Police has 30 days to process your background check and either issue or refuse to issue the license. You need a license to make the purchase, but you can't get one.
Okay. So
It's a catch-22.
Yeah, it is. All right. So given that the judge has said this catch-22 can continue while the case is being litigated, it's important to note the case itself moves forward, right?
The case itself does move forward. The judge denied the request for a temporary restraining order. There's actually 2 separate lawsuits that we're talking about here. There's the lawsuit that relates to the ban on commonly owned semi-automatic rifles and standard capacity magazines. Then there's also a lawsuit that relates to the handgun qualification license. There was a hearing in both of those suits on a temporary restraining order, and the judge denied both temporary restraining orders, but that does not in any way mean that the lawsuits themselves cannot move forward. In fact, the judge specifically said that she wanted to see the case move forward quickly, and counsel will be meeting later this week to determine the schedule moving forward for the further hearings. Getting a temporary restraining order is a relatively extraordinary measure when you're in the legal process. So not having gotten the temporary restraining order does not mean anything in terms of the validity of the arguments that are being made.
Talking with Shannon Alford, NRA ILA's Maryland State Liaison, and no, I think you're absolutely right about that, Shannon. Here's the thing: we probably cannot expect the legislature to remedy this even though clearly there are problems here. We know that leading up to the October 1st supposed implementation of these new gun control laws, Governor O'Malley had, used state officials who were not law enforcement to try to go through the backlog of these background checks. What, if anything, do you get the feeling, Shannon, that the state is this intentional? Are they trying to make it as difficult as they can for people to exercise their rights, or is this incompetence that we're seeing here, the inability of the state to actually enforce its own?
I think it's a little column A, a little column B. Passing the bill in the first place is definitely making it as difficult as possible for people to exercise their rights. And they had no qualms about saying exactly that. Part of the reason that they set up the licensing requirement and required the training and required fingerprinting and everything that goes into having to get this handgun qualification license before you can make a purchase is to make it difficult to purchase a handgun in a dealer's shop, or, because it's Maryland, in a private transfer, because private transfers go through dealers in Maryland. And they said it on the floor, in the legislature, in the committee. They want to make it as difficult as possible. Now, they claim that this is because it's going to cut down on straw purchases. I mean, someone who's willing to make a straw purchase is already willing to commit a federal felony, so why they're not going to be willing to jump through a couple more hoops is beyond me. But and then there's also a little of the other hand is their inability to implement the law that they produced. Now, the law was passed in April. It was signed in May, but regulations didn't even get published or heard by the legislative committee that has to review the regulations to implement it until last week. They had a week before the law was supposed to go into effect, before they published the regulations. They've had all this time to set up the licensing system, didn't do it. Had all this time to gather instructors and make that information public and make the necessary curriculum available to the instructors so that they could begin teaching the courses. Didn't do it. So, and then, frankly, they've had plenty of time to hire additional personnel and put more resources into the Maryland State Police Licensing Division to clear the backlog on the existing handgun purchases, and they didn't do it. So it's both.
Okay. Well, listen, Shannon, I appreciate you coming on the program with the update. If folks, do you want to hear from gun owners who can tell you firsthand of the problems they're having in exercising their rights? What does that help the case at all? What can folks do?
It can. People can. For one thing, people can make donations to NRA ILA, and they can mark their checks for Maryland litigation to help support the suit that way. But yeah, if they have problems trying to access the system, we've already heard from some gun owners in Maryland who were trying to do the right thing. They went down to get fingerprinted so that they could apply for the license, and the fingerprinting system apparently isn't working right either. So every little bit of information helps.
All right. Listen, Shannon, thanks again, and look forward to talking to you again very soon as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Cam.
You bet. Shannon Alford, NRA ILA Maryland State Liaison, joining us here on Cam and Company.